As for the top story, the Mets have made an addition to their bullpen this week, and it is technically a reunion. The Mets have re-signed right-handed pitcher Adam Ottavino to a one-year, $4.5 million contract after the veteran reliever declined his $7.25 million player option for 2024. After signing a two-year, $14.5 million contract with the Mets last offseason, Ottavino posted a 3.21 earned run average, a 4.52 fielding independent pitching, striking out 23.8% of batters across 61.2 innings pitched out of the Mets bullpen. But overall, Ottavino did struggle a lot last year, with 20 of his total 22 earned runs surrendered, ending up in high leverage situations, where Ottavino posted a 6.72 earned run average in 32.2 innings. Ottavino will now be entering a 38-year-old season, and while declining his player option, the Mets will be paying deferred salary from 2025 to 2031. Andy Martino reported that the Mets are still considering adding bullpen help, as they have been linked to other free agents such as Ryan Stanek, Bill Maton, and Wendy Peralta. Without even starting off this conversation, I think it's safe to say that you and me are on the same page with this.
Yes. I mean, this is a guy that I made the video about this weekend. I just didn't think it was the right move. I felt that we've seen him in a decline already from his second year compared to his first year. And like we talked about, I wasn't even a fan of them bringing him back the first time for last season, because I felt that it was a typical reliever thing where they give you the one great year. They used him a lot the first year that he was with the Mets. He had way too many outings where he's going 2 innings, and they had to do that because, first of all, he was pitching very good. I mean, don't get me wrong. He was a pleasant surprise because he did pitch so well, even when they gave him those 2 innings and things like that. But with a guy at that age, you just knew that the regression was bound to happen the following season. And like you said, I mean, he wasn't good in high leverage. Just across the board, everything was worse. And when you see a player that's clearly on a decline, and obviously with his age, I think that you should try to avoid that player. But the Mets, they decided to bring him back. And I just don't understand how that necessarily makes the Mets a better team. That's the thing that kind of worries me, is that, okay, you know, we said, all right, we got to focus on maybe the bullpen now with this last few moves that we're going to make in the offseason. I just don't think that bringing a guy back who didn't play great for you and is most likely going to be even worse was the right decision to make. And I hope that this is not the last move, because I just don't think that you can, even for Hector Neris to get $9 million and a club option, I would rather have done that than get Adam Ottavino and bring him back in. I hope that this does not take them out of the running of a Wandy Peralta or Ryan Stanek or some of these other guys that we've talked about, because those guys are much better fits, much better pitchers. So I don't understand why they're settling for less, why they're kind of recycling these players that we've seen before, when all the signs point to him being even worse. So I think that so far this offseason, they've been trying to take this approach of, okay, maybe these guys could bounce back. You know, they're still in their, you know, early 30s, late 20s, things like that. You know, maybe they still could have a little bit of potential left in them. They had a down year that they could get it going. With Ottavino, I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like he's kind of reached that point where everything going forward is just a steady decline. So I just thought that this was not the kind of move that Stearns would make. I was a bit surprised, but he's here again. So this is where we're at. And like I said, I just hope that this is not the last move for the bullpen, because you're really relying on Jorge Lopez to be an automatic bounce back handed if you want him to be a true difference maker. Because the other guys that are here, who knows, you know, Michael Tonkin and Austin Adams and Phil Bickford and Drew Smith, who's still here. Like, I don't have much faith in those guys. So yes, we have Diaz come back from the injury. We still got Brooks Raley, but other than that, I don't have too much confidence in a lot of these other relievers. And if we're going to be prioritizing bullpen over DH, which I think JD Martinez, you know, these other guys that we've talked about, Jorge Soler, those guys to me are much higher priorities. But if you're going to tell me you're going to go for Ottavino over one of those guys, I just strongly disagree.
I think since the beginning of this entire offseason, I think especially with the pitching, I've been able to say that I understand why Stearns brought this arm in, or why Stearns traded for this arm, or why Stearns signed this guy on a minor league deal, why he likes this guy. What are these little things that he likes? This one, I don't understand. I don't think it's just like the fact that Adam Ottavino is 38 years old. I think it also has the fact that he also just, I think that this has just run its course. Like, I think that at this point, they got their 1-year deal from him in 2022. He pitched well, and a 1-year deal for a reliever, you take it and leave it. That's like one of the main things that you need to do with bullpen free agency signings. You take it and leave it. Unless he has a Miles amount of upside, which he obviously doesn't, there wasn't a reason to bring him back. They brought him back. They basically escaped a jail sentence, basically, with him declining that option. I'm not fine with it being obviously the only move that they make. If this is the only bullpen move that they make at this current moment, aside from, Jorge Lopez or something, that is going to be a little bit concerning, because that means that you are relying a little bit too much on minor league depth, and you're relying a little too much on some of these arms that obviously they could be good, but they're going to need to bounce back. They needed to get a more established arm in here. I think that Ottavino is established, but the problem is that in that downswing of 30, we don't know what we're going to get from him. And I think that as compared to the highest capacity, the 100 percentile outcome that you got in 2022, compared to what he did in 2023, the command was gone, the control was gone. He was giving up so many runs in high leverage while you really, really needed him to, because you couldn't rely on anybody else with Edwin Diaz out. That bullpen was running on fumes. And I understand that maybe the pitching staff, most likely it will be better this year, because I don't think it can be worse. I don't think that this was the right move, and I don't think that this is going to be something that pays off the best as it did in 2022. Like, this is the same contract that he signed around there in 2022. Maybe there's a way that, he pitches out of it being a bargain, but, selfishly, I'm hoping that he's not as good as 2022, because I don't want them to bring him back the next year. So I understand he had some success. It was overall, in a vacuum, it was a solid year for Adam Ottavino. But for what they needed him to do, and they're probably going to have him do this year with all these uncertainties in the bullpen, I just don't think that this was the right move. And then we also had, like, 5-6 days ago, him on MLB Network talking about kind of how he wanted to renegotiate his whole salary and everything. And then he also talked about his uncertainty with the Mets front office and the direction that they were going in. And then less than a week later, he's back. Now, I understand he said he wanted to come back. Obviously, New York, he's from New York, whatever. But that was just very odd to me, where he kind of just screwed himself at a $7 million. And then he comes back for less money. And then you have the deferred, they still are giving him deferred payments now. And then he says that he doesn't know what's going on with the front office, and then he comes back. It was just a very odd situation. This whole entire road after that 2022 season, it just seemed so unnecessary, and it still seems so unnecessary, especially the fact that they just brought him back again for a third year in a row.
When you just look at baseball in general, it's hard to get a guy to just give you good year after good year after good year when it comes to the bullpen. It's like you said, when you get that one good year, you take it and leave it. Thank you for your service. Let's go get somebody else. That's kind of the way that you normally approach bullpen. So, like you said, I thought they really dodged a bullet when he declined his player option, because that's what I also really disliked about the deal they gave him last year, was the fact that he even had that player option for it. I was like, oh my gosh, how do you give this guy 2 years at his age? And once he declined it, I thought that was a big surprise. Okay, good. The Mets don't have to pay him. They could get somebody else. And yet they still have.
It's like $3 million less, but again, that's like pocket change. I just, it's so odd. And maybe there is a reality, and maybe it is the reality where, all these other relievers that they've been linked to, Stanek, Peralta, there's a possibility that maybe a few of them wanted a multi-year deal. Maybe a few of them wanted the closer role. Maybe they wanted that. And maybe Ottavino was the best that they could possibly get on a 1-year deal in that sort of $10 million range that they supposedly have left to spend. I just don't think that this was it. And I think that this might have a costly concern if you are using this guy in huge high leverage situations where he was really, really bad at last year. If he wasn't 38 years old, I think there would be less of a concern. Like if he was Jorge Lopez, who is just entering his 30s, this probably would be fine. Okay, perfect. We'll put him in there. If it works, it works. And if not, we'll just move on. For some reason, I just don't really see a single situation where he just bounces back to that 2022 form. I just don't see him being back end level effective this year, like next year. I just don't see that happening.
Well, I think the issue is that if Jorge Lopez does not bounce back,
yeah, of
then
course,
Adam Ottavino is your setup man. I think that's the other tough part, is that if they don't add another guy, who else is going to be the eighth inning guy or the other high leverage reliever with Edwin Diaz? It's going to be Ottavino again. And, for them to take this approach, it worked before, it'll work again. It's not as simple as that. It can't just be like, Edwin Diaz is healthy this year, so now Adam Ottavino could go to his role from 2 years ago, so he's going to give us those results again. I just feel like that is not the right mindset to have when it comes to, like you said, a reliever at this age where there's just such a less likely possibility of a bounce.
I talked about this a lot. I'd say like probably throughout this entire offseason, I've talked about catching lightning in a bottle. That's the type of way that they need to look at it when it comes to bullpen or it comes to a starter or something like that, because of the player development that is still like going on with a lot of the pitching prospects. Some of them are not ready, bringing in these 1-year deals and things like that of guys who project well. Well, the thing is that I just don't see at any point Adam Ottavino really projecting well going into a 38-year-old season, not necessarily just because he was bad last year or we've just seen the worst of him and we've seen the very best and the very worst and you're kind of walking a tightrope here, but also there's that factor of that pitch clock nearly destroyed him last year. Let's not forget, and not to mention, I'm pretty sure it's going to be 3 seconds faster this year. I don't see a situation where this ends up working in the favor of 2022. And that's really the only concern that I have with this move. If this is the only move that they make for the bullpen, that's very concerning. I'm fine with Adam Ottavino being here. It's just, I don't like the role that he's probably going to be called upon.
Yeah, I think Peralta is a really good fit, obviously being left-handed, being so much younger, great numbers against left-handed hitters. And Ottavino, he's been a guy who's been able to kind of pitch well to Ryan left when he is going well. But I think also with a guy like Ryan Stanek, here's another guy who's much younger, a higher profile velocity, done it in the postseason, done it with multiple teams. Like you said, they're just guys who are better fits. And I got to be honest with you, I don't see Wandy Peralta getting a multi-year deal. I really just don't see it. So, that's been my one, like, okay, well, if Stan gets a multi-year deal, I understand why they went the Ottavino route. But I think if you have the choice between one of Ottavino or Peralta, to me, it's Peralta 10 times out of 10.
Peralta, I would definitely go after. Stanek, I go after. I don't understand the Mets fans' obsession with Phil Maton. I don't think he's... the problem is that I think that he's a solid reliever. He's got some decent stuff. But the thing is that this bullpen needs velocity, and he doesn't have it. So it's just like, I just don't think that that's the route to go with. Like, if you're looking for soft tossers, they have to be lefties in order to get that type of advantage to batters and be that sort of strikeout pitcher like Brooks Raley is. It's very confusing, this timeline with Ottavino, and I'm sure it's going to continue to be confusing as he continues to pitch, and maybe there is going to be a situation where he gets the high leverage jobs, still pitches like crap, and they still give all of these innings to him for absolutely no reason. But I don't know. I'm not really looking forward to seeing Adam Ottavino pitch for the Mets this year. We did see the best out of him. We probably saw the best year of his career in 2022, but I'm not taking a huge bet on it because I just see a huge lack of upside there, and I can see where this is going to get way, way worse. And I hope that if he does struggle and if he is not effective and possibly even worse than 2023, I hope that there is a position where they cut the cord. I'm just hoping that they don't use track record as much as they did. And if he continues to struggle, if he's terrible in June, one of the worst relievers in all of baseball, I hope that they have the decency to just cut it loose on a 1-year deal.